Evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome here to the 12th race of the Elite Racing League MegaDriver86 series. More importantly, playoff race number 1. Last week at Daytona, we set the grid. 14 drivers made it into the postseason, and now their journey to the championship begins here. Our first stop, it's the road course of Watkins Glen International. Seth Cole being joined by Sam Dyer. And Sam, you got to think that when all these drivers that, as they headed into Daytona and they left Daytona, that are these road course ringers, they had to have had this race circled on their calendar.
Yeah, I think David Tucker and Chad Frankenfield, who are our two most dominant road course drivers that we've seen throughout the season, I think they really were excited for this. They were already locked in last week, so they were just racing as hard as they could until they were accidentally wrecked out. But this week, I think this is a race that they're thinking win, and you're into the next round.
No doubt about it. I mean, David Tucker and Chad Frankenfield, we saw them all through practice, kind of a little bit of cat and mouse, one to the top of the board, then the other one to the top of the board, just trying to best each other. And lo and behold, they're both starting on the front row for this race. Tucker was able to best Chad Frankenfield, but they will be your front row. And one thing that we've definitely seen that's been a theme in the other two road courses we've had this season at Sebring and at Tsukuba, track position really matters.
Yeah, it really does. There's a couple of places here on track that you can pass people. Turn 1 is one of the best places to pass people. Then you also have turn 8 and 9 are going to be interesting coming to the front stretch.
Thing that I kind of looked at in particular for this race was, you look at Sebring, you look at Tsukuba, and you think to yourself, okay, there's not really that many people out there that would claim to be experts at those tracks because they don't really frequent those tracks. But there are two tracks, if you're a NASCAR driver, you're a NASCAR fan, no matter what game you play, no matter what console it's on, that you usually frequent and have at least some experience in, that is that one is Sonoma, the other one would be here at Watkins Glen. So you have to think that maybe some of these other guys that are behind them, like maybe Jared Campbell, maybe Rishev Kosla, Ethan Burrell, they're looking at this as, okay, maybe I've got a little bit of a shot if I can go outside the box with some strategy to maybe sneak a win here.
Yeah, I think also we got to watch out for all the guys that don't have this track circled and are more so are trying to just survive to get points. Some people to watch out for is probably going to be Joshua Adams and Tyler Riggs, both not qualifying very well, both down in the lower part of our field. But there are people that are probably going to try to survive just to get the most points that they can at the end of the race.
Yeah, I mean, bear in mind that a max, or a minimum rather, of 6 drivers are going to make it into the next round, the round of 9, on points. So for those drivers that may be looking at the racetracks we're going to, like Watkins Glen today, Kansas next week, following week at Martinsville, they're maybe thinking, okay, I got to look to point my way in rather than go out there, try and win the race, and maybe take myself out in a wreck.
And it looks like we're almost all gridded up.
We are, and while these drivers are currently getting graded, we're going to take a look at a side-by-side here because this is what the point standings look like with the reformatted points coming into this race. And as you can clearly see, advantage to Frankenfield with having the 3 victories this season. Tyler Riggs right there behind him, David Tucker as well, Jared Campbell. But you look at some of these guys down there that just barely made it in last week at Daytona, like Stephen Mago, Andrew Rucker, Rishev Kosla. It's kind of the race within the race. You got to think those guys are going to be aware of where each other are on track to try and make sure that they're going to best each other points-wise when we get to the elimination race at Martinsville.
Yeah, I think those bottom 4 guys are going to be looking at a Tyler Riggs or a Joshua Adams. They're starting so low back. They're thinking, I got to beat these guys. I got to get ahead of them so I can get the most points because they aren't probably going to get the most points at this race.
Thing that we saw at both Sebring and Tsukuba, it was both of them were very big tracks. A lot of times you get into the field getting very spread out, so we had long green flag runs and everything. I think we're going to see that here today at Watkins Glen. It's a much shorter track. Obviously, as I said, these drivers are going to be a little bit more familiar with the layout of how this track works. We're probably going to see a lot more passing in the field, maybe closer together. So do you think that we maybe will get away with some long green flag runs, see this thing go into maybe pit strategy, or are we going to see quite a number of yellow flags?
I think it's a really high possibility of us having a green flag run. We also got to be careful of whenever cars are going into turn 1 or through the S's. Those are real caution-heavy areas that if we are going to see a caution, those are probably the 2 spots that we're going to see it.
So, of course, we've got a lot of different passing zones here as well. A lot of drivers will try it there in turn 1, as you mentioned. The carousel is going to be another place. Maybe try and outbrake somebody into the bus stop. And then you've got, of course, those final corners that they're going to be coming to here, that left and right-hander before coming to the front straightaway. So we may see a lot of drivers try and stick it in there. And that was one thing that was really interesting. I think it was back at Sebring where, we designated all these passing zones. None of the drivers seemed to use them. They used the places that we didn't think you could make a pass. So maybe these drivers will get creative here today as well. But we're getting set here as the pace car is going to make that right-hand turn onto pit road. And the field will be in the hands of David Tooker. We're back at the broken record of the leader wants to be able to control the restarts at these types of tracks. And here we go. Green flags in the air. And we are playoff racing at the Glen.
Frankenfield's going to be taking the early lead here, but we're going to see what David Tucker is going to be able to outbreak him here going into turn number 1. Looks like he's going to not be able to, and Frankenfield's going to hold it on the outside, but they're still side by side going into the S's.
The drivers looked like they wanted to attempt 3 wide going into turn 1, but they stayed double file. Looks like everybody got through turn 1 pretty well, and Frankenfield now has a rear decklet full of David Tooker. So if you're Tooker, how eager are you to pass the 15 this early on?
Everyone did get through except for one person. Damian Leninger, our winner from Daytona, who inched his way into the race, got off of turn 1 very high and lost all his positions, is now all the way back to last place.
Break there for Leninger, but the good news for him is with being a road course, least likely to go a lap down with the fact that this is such a big road course. But right now I think he'd maybe have to be hoping for a caution so that way he can gain some track position back.
Just looking at lap times that we were seeing throughout practice and qualifying, I'm expecting to see David Tucker and Frankenfield pull away from the pack, but everyone that's battling for third, they are so close in speed that we could be seeing at least a 6-car battle for just third place.
There you got Joey Bailey in third. He's got Ethan Burrell behind him. And, you look at some drivers that are in this field here today that were up there in the charts as far as speed. They're up here in the running order, like Joey Bailey, like Ryan Lutz. We focus obviously here on this portion of the season on the playoff drivers, but there are guys out there that are not battling for a championship that still want to go out there and win races.
Yeah, and it's good to see that people are still coming out in playoff time, even though they might not have a chance for the championship, but going for those wins. It's awesome to see these guys coming out for this.
Back and see the 12 of Damian Leninger. He was back, I believe, in the 26th position when he lost all those spots. He's been able to gain 2 of those spots back and now makes his way by Joshua L. Adams. We were talking about Adams actually during practice. Really seemed to be struggling. He's actually got some front end damage right now early on in this one on that Best Buy Toyota Supra. And there's another car around there. I believe that was Brett Jones in the 89 spun in the carousel. We're still green, however. But going back to Adams, I mean, we were kind of looking that this may be a track he's willing to take a mulligan at and look forward to Kansas next week instead.
Yeah, one of those things that's marked down. And going up front, we got David Tucker who takes the lead, and Frankenfield almost lost second to Joey Bailey.
Frankenfield going to drop back into the second slot. And, you mentioned about these two, the dominance that they've had at the road courses. You go back to the last 2 road courses that we've had. You had Frankenfield leading 15 laps. David Tooker 12 laps at Sebring. Frankenfield went on to win that race. And then you look at the following event at Tsukuba. Frankenfield led 54 of those 60 laps. David Tooker only led 1, but it was the important one. He led the final lap in that photo finish to pick up his first win on the season. But definitely we're seeing that with it being the road course, no doubt about it, no surprise to see these two back up at the front of the field.
Not at all. Everyone seems to be taking it very nice and easy throughout the back. You've seen everyone is still, there's no one who's trying to make any passes at the moment.
As far as your playoff drivers, you got 4 of them up here inside of the top 5. Ethan Burrell there in 4th, and looking here at Jared Rexing in the 10. We were talking about the fact that he's actually kind of an under the radar, maybe dark horse, road course racer. Had a decent outing back at Tsukuba, finished in the top 10 there, finished just outside the top 10 at Sebring, even though he had a really strong car. He had an early issue in that race, so you got to look at this guy. Maybe, I don't know if we could necessarily call him a dark horse to maybe pull a strategy and sneak a win here, but no doubt about it, could definitely leave here with a good points day.
A good points day indeed. I was going through the pack and I saw that Joshua Personette did spin out going into turn number 8 and losing tons of positions, but it's also giving Damian Leninger another spot up.
We've had a couple of drivers that have had issues early on here. We saw Brent Jones spun around. Personet's had issues. Joshua Adams with an early damage. Damian Leneger is towards the rear of the field. However, he is doing a good job working his way back up. He's now up to the 19th position. So Leneger on his own, without the aid of a yellow flag, bunching everybody back up, doing a pretty good job of picking up spots. As up at the front, looks like now Tooker is pretty much in control. He's opened about a car length and a half, maybe 2 car lengths back to Frankenfield. And I think now these guys, they're out there just trying to see what they've got for the long run.
Yeah, it's still a long race, 45 laps here, and we're only getting to lap number 5 now. So still a ton of race, still another pit stop, still at least 1 pit stop, maybe even 2 pit stops to go. So these guys are probably just clocking times and just trying to branch themselves away from everyone else.
The guy that seemed to be struggling in practice and didn't do well in qualifying either is Tyler Riggs, 2-time winner this season. And I remember him saying back when we interviewed him, I think it was back at Sebring, how he really didn't prefer the road courses. If he can come away with a car in one piece, that seems a victory to him. So, if you're looking at something like this for the 26, currently running back in the 18th position, is he another guy like Adams that is just trying to survive here today and look ahead toward Kansas?
I think Tyler Riggs really has Martinsville circled up for his racetrack to watch out for. He's done very well at all the short tracks that we've been at. I think that's one that we need to watch for Tyler Riggs at Martinsville.
Damian Leneger right there, hounding him for that 18th position. Move a little bit further up towards the front of the field, and a guy that I kind of thought might be a third name we would put in the same category as David Tooker and Chad Frankenfield is Jared Campbell. I remember that the battle that Tooker and Campbell had back at Sebring. Campbell, I think he made his first start of the season back at that road course and was very impressive. And he also held pretty good court with Tooker and Frankenfield when we were at Tsukuba. So I thought maybe he'd be up there as a name we should look at as well. Right now, he is back in the 6th position, just behind Jared Rexing. But I also remember he, back at Tsukuba, was one of those drivers that kind of went out of the box in terms of pit strategy. And with us now 6 laps in and the field pretty spread out, you got to think now that's something these drivers are thinking about that are running about this position just inside the top 10, but not necessarily in the top 5 of what can I do differently from the leaders? How can I get an advantage maybe in terms of fresh tire rubber, in terms of getting track position with short pitting?
Yeah, short pitting is always a strategy at almost every track that there's a ton of tire wear on. And at road courses, that's where you see most of the tire wear, is all these guys are taking all these corners so hard that tire wear is something very important. Some of these guys are going to be dropping speeds. I mean, we've been seeing already a second off of a lot of these guys' speeds from where they were at qualifying.
Coming back, looking at a couple more of our playoff contenders up here inside of the top 10. Looking at 8th place, that's Andrew Rucker in the 64. Rucker headed into Daytona last week, pretty much locked in. He wasn't officially locked in. He just needed to really have a few drivers finish out of the race, and then he was able to solidify his spot in the playoffs. And Rucker's another driver who has been pretty consistent at the road courses. 11th at Sebring, and then he ended up finishing, I believe it was, actually, I don't know. No, actually, he didn't. Oh, yes, he did. He ran 7th at Tsukuba. So, pretty good performances for him as well. Maybe another driver that was looking at the road course of Watkins Glen as a place to gain points.
Yeah, if we go back another position from Rucker to Zelensky, you got Tate Lytle, Joshua Clark, Kendall Noah Player. All these guys are chase people who are in the playoffs, and they're all right on top of each other.
Joshua Clark making it in on points. Tate Lytle, of course, winning back at, I believe it was Michigan. And Kendall Noah Player winning that really, really long race at Pocono Raceway. And not too far behind them, you got Rishev Koslaw, who just barely made it into the playoffs. I think he got the last spot last week at Daytona. He's right now running in the 13th position. His finish is not too bad at the road courses this season. 8th at Sebring, and then he followed it up with a 10th place run at Tsukuba. So maybe another guy that we should look at that maybe can sneak out a top 10 in the closing stages here. We've got a good battle up ahead of him there between Joshua Clark and Levi Zelensky.
Zelensky trying to go below, but Joshua Clark goes too high and is now going to be losing a spot to both Noah Kendall Player and Zelensky.
Up here towards the front of the field, you've got Joey Bailey running in third, Jared Rexon in fourth, and I think we got a good battle going on here. Well, I thought we did. It looked like the 31 of Jared Campbell was trying to make a move on somebody. It might have been the 66 of Lutz, who he's closing in on again. So this might be the closest battle up towards the front, the battle for 6th place. About drivers that, had good luck at Daytona last week, like Damian Leniger winning, Rishav Kosla just barely getting in. Well, right behind Kosla, 14th place Ethan Riesener, and I can guarantee you, after Daytona last week, the last driver that wanted to go to a track where he was going to see rumble strips and road course turns is Ethan Riesener, because that, let's be honest, that was what basically took him out of the hunt of making it into the playoffs last week. For those that didn't tune in, he was trying to get out of the way of the race leaders, went down towards the runoff apron, coming out of the tri-oval down into turn 1, and he hit the rumble strip that would necessarily be NASCAR turn 1 for the road course section, flipped the car over, and that took him out of the race.
Yeah, that was probably one of the more bizarre accidents that we saw last week at Daytona. It looked like he was, like you said, he was getting out of the way, but also it kind of looked like he was having either internet or wheel problems, because his car just went straight during that accident.
Obviously, with not making it into the playoffs, he's trying to finish out the season with something to prove. And what you think about the fact of him running here in 14th, think about maybe him finishing top 10 in the next 3 races and thinking of what if that hadn't happened? What if I made it into the playoffs and maybe had a chance to make it into the round of 9? But we are now a fifth of the way through this race. Tooker has not run away from Frankenfield. Frankenfield's right there still. He's maybe at the most lost about 3, maybe 4 car lengths, but he is still within striking distance if Tooker makes a mistake.
Yeah, I've been watching their time loops, and it looks like Frankenfield will gain up to him, and then he'll do a not accident, but do a little bit of a mistake, and then he'll lose some time going to about half second, but then gaining it back to about 0.3 seconds on to Tucker.
I don't know if this was necessarily because drivers were pushing it in practice, trying to get all they could in terms of lap times, but one thing I saw a number of drivers have some issues with in practice was lack of rear grip, especially going through some of these corners. I believe actually Tooker, the driver that we're looking at, had an issue going through the S's where the car fishtailed on him and he slid up and I think got the right rear into the steel guardrail. Joshua Clark and a couple of others had issues coming out of the bootleg, out of chicanes. So you have to think that if they had that kind of issue going out there with fresh tires in practice, what is it got to be like? It's got to be like skating when you're out there on 10-lap old tires.
Oh, skating for sure. I mean, another thing is that we've been seeing these guys throughout practice, throughout the whole entire season, pushing their cars to the limits at practice and then woeing it up a little bit during the race so they're not putting their cars on edge at all times. So I'm not expecting these guys to completely throw it into the corners as hard as they were in practice. But, I mean, like you were saying, tire wear now, and they could be skating off the corners, through the corners, and getting that rear grip to get that launch off the corners is so important here at road courses.
With this being a shorter road course than the tracks we've been at previously this season, more than likely they can make more laps on 1 tank of fuel. You'd have to think, if it is possible to make this on a one-stop, these drivers, they're probably all going to be shooting for somewhere between lap 20 to 25 to probably make that pit stop.
I'm looking around to see if there's anyone who's thinking about pitting or not. So far, I'm not seeing that.
I wonder too if you're David Tooker. I mean, you're out in front. By the time you get to the entrance of pit road, or actually rather, by time Chad Frankenfield gets to the entrance of pit road, David Tooker's already going to be past that. So you got to think that in terms of maybe short pitting, the ball would be in Chad Frankenfield's court. He'd be able to see, okay, the 19's staying out. I'm going to cut in and I'm going to come to pit road a lap before him.
Yeah, short pitting behind someone is the better option, especially either a lap or 2 before the person in front of you. Just to get a couple of just milliseconds is so useful here.
Kind of a case of deja vu, because I remember back at Tsukuba, it was actually David Tooker that was one of the first that hit pit road, and he was laying down such good lap times that within 10 laps he had reeled in and passed Chad Frankenfield in that final corner for the win. So you got to think that might be in the back of Frankenfield's mind here, and he might want to have a little payback maybe to that 19 car.
Maybe. Looking back into the pack, we got a battle for 10th. where we have Zelensky and Kendall Noah Player battling it out coming into the bus stop.
Kendall Noah Player, you know, I was a little bit worried about him starting off the playoffs here, just basically because he had that win at Pocono, but then his finishes weren't really up there in the top 10 in the following weeks, especially heading towards the regular season end. So I was kind of wondering, you know, did he get that win at Pocono and basically then just kind of go in the mentality, all right, that win gets me into the playoffs, I don't have to be as aggressive. But with him up here right now, battling for that 10th position, looks like he definitely has got his game face on. It looks like he wants to make sure he advances into the round of 9. Just
saw that coming up. Joshua L. Adams is just disconnected from the race. It looks like he had a huge wreck where he was not able to continue the race anymore. He's going to be finishing in it looks like 25th.
Believe you are correct. Yes, so well, that is a tough break there for Joshua Adams, but as we mentioned, he had been struggling, not only in practice, but also in qualifying and early on in this race. So no doubt about it, they're going to be looking towards more than likely Kansas, but then, of course, probably Martinsville as well to get in. I mean, maybe not necessarily win, but at least utilize those 2 races to point their way in. But this is going to put them in a little bit of a points deficit, you'd have to think, heading to Kansas as well, due to the fact that the other competitors, all 13 remaining chase contenders, they're still out there on track.
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult for him to get back into points contention, especially with the deficit that he's at and the way that everyone else is running that's still in playoffs. He still has a chance for sure, points-wise, to get in, but it's looking like now he might be in a win to get in type of mentality now.
Had an exchange for 3rd place that lap. Ethan Burrell getting around Joey Bailey, and you know, Ethan Burrell's gotten in. He got into the playoffs. He got in via points, but you gotta think, this guy, he is begging for a win. He's been so close in the vicinity so many times, and he either comes up just short or he ends up getting wrecked in the closing stages while leading the race. So, you know, while he's definitely got a good road course car here today, don't know if he's quite on the level as Tooker and Frankenfield. Tooker's his teammate. You think maybe they had a little bit of a conference pre-race?
Oh, they could have easily had a talk. We got our leaders coming up to lap traffic ahead. But for sure, Burrell looks like a car that has the consistency to win, at least to have a chance to win in the future races during this playoff time. Obviously, a car that if he continues being consistent, he can make it into the next round just based off of points. And I'm interested to see if he does get his win soon.
Mentioned about them catching up to traffic. That was Brent Wetz in the 72 who went through the chicane. They are allowed to do that to get out of the way of the race leaders. And then the 32 of Dustin Dewar also was just bypassed by the 2 race leaders. And that's another thing that we should bring up too, that actually played quite a factor into the photo finish we had back at Tsukuba between Tooker and Frankenfield, and that was lap traffic. With it being a smaller road course, they're going to encounter slower traffic more often, I would think, here at the Glen, and that could, in the closing stages, be a huge factor into who's going to win this race as well.
Yeah, we're looking through, and it's looking like Durr was the last person that could pass. The next closest car on track for lap-wise would be Shane Divalamatova, and he's coming out of turn, or going into turn number 8, while the leaders are just going in through the bus stop. So there's still some spacing there before the leaders catch more lap traffic.
The driver that is in the playoffs that we haven't highlighted yet, and why don't we do that right now, and that is Stephen Mago in the 83. Right now he is in the 15th position, and he made it in on points, and he just got bypassed by Damian Lenegers. So after Lenegers' issues and falling all the way back to 25th in the early stages, he has fought his way up in 15 laps. 11 positions, I should say rather. He's up to the 14th spot, and you gotta think, man, if this car is this good on the long run, imagine just maybe how fast he would be. He might be up there in the battle with Tooker and Frankenfield.
Looking at his lap times compared to what he's doing, it looks like he'd be around the 10th place with his lap, based on his lap time and other cars that are around that area. He's running about a 1:15, and believe it was Tate Lytle. No, it was Jared Campbell that was running also was running a 1:15.
Ethan Reasoner next that he will try and catch. That would be for the 13th position. As the leaders just completed the 15th lap. We're now on lap 16, nearing the halfway point. and still right within the same vicinity as each other. Lap times are pretty similar as well. Frankenfield's only running maybe about lower than David Tooker. They're both still running up there in the 111s. As a matter of fact, Tooker, Frankenfield, and Ethan Burrell are the only three that last time by that ran in the 111s. And that's what everybody seemed to be shooting for in practice.
I'm interested to see what Frankenfield's going to do here, because I think the only way that he can get past Tooker right now is by short pitting and getting those tires. It's going to be a risk and reward type of situation. The risk of later on and during the race, maybe Tooker could catch him because Tooker would have better tires at that point. But the reward of having faster tires and gaining the time that he is behind right now.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with you on that. I mean, I think right now that is Frankenfield's only option. I don't know how hard he's pushing it right at this current point in time, but you can see that, when we keep going back and then we come back up to the race leaders, the interval continues to open just the least little bit between the 19 and the 15. So Tooker definitely has, it seems, a little bit better of a long run car as well. Look right there as they went through the carousel. Tooker had it down right on the bottom. Frankenfield kind of had to run the middle. So it looks like he's having a little bit less of a better handling race car, especially going into the corners, having to adjust the way he approaches those turns.
Yeah, I mean, looking at their lap times from practice to qualifying to even now, they've always been so close, just hundreds of seconds off of each other, which is just fractions of time. And with how large this lead is, it's going to be up to pit strategy to figure out if Frankenfield's able to catch Tooker or pass him.
Now, with the way that the playoff system works, 14 drivers made it in, only 9 will move on to the second round. So there will be 5 drivers that will be eliminated when we reach the checkered flag at Martinsville in 2 weeks. And right now, as we look at the drivers where they're running currently, a couple of drivers that we'd have to look at that might be a little bit in danger. Of course, we still have 2 races to go after this, but we already mentioned Joshua Adams. You got Tyler Riggs down there in 20th. I'm also seeing Stephen Mago and Damian Leniger down there in 14th and 15th. So a couple of these guys might need to step it up just the least little bit, because right now the rest of their championship competitors are running ahead of them.
Speaking of Leniger, he is passing Ethan Reisner for 13th. Got to pass him in the S's.
You mentioned the fact that in terms of his lap times, he's running about where 10th place would be. So he's only about 3 positions behind that area. Noah Player, Rishev Kolsla, and Joshua Clark would be the next ones on his hit list. Looking at the 28 of Joshua Clark, that's another driver that actually had some pretty good runs in the road course races that we've had this season. Had a 9th place run at Sebring and a 13th place run at Tsukuba. So it's really interesting to me looking at this field. You would think that there'd be a lot of guys that would come in looking like they were really good road course racers, and then there'd be those guys that you'd think, okay, this is a track that they are not going to do well at. They're just going to try and survive here. But when you look at it, there's about 75% of our playoff drivers that actually have had good runs, if at not one, both of the road courses we've been at this season.
Yeah, it's been the consistency that we've been seeing where people have been ending up. We got the 2 guys that are up front of David Tooker and Chad Frankenfield that have been consistently up front. And then you got Ethan Burrell, who's been in the top 3 where he usually has been. And you just got all these guys that are in their usual spots, even on other courses, even being the same here at a road course.
We're about to have a Toyota party from 3rd place on back, because on the same straightaway, you got Ethan Burrell, you got Joey Bailey, Jared Rexing, and Ryan Lutz, 3rd back through 6th. And this might be the best battle on track. We saw Burrell made it around Joey Bailey about maybe 10 laps ago, but Bailey has slowly been beginning to reel him back in, and Rexing, on the other hand, has been reeling the both of them in.
Yeah, Rexing's been the one driver that I've been really impressed with. He slowly looked like he was going to pass Bailey, but did not get him in time. I think there was a little bit of a mistake that was made, but Burrell's not pulling away from these guys. They are all staying super close to one another.
You gotta wonder, we talk about Frankenfield trying to short pit David Tooker. These guys here, they are about 7+ seconds back behind the top 2. I don't know if short pitting would necessarily gain them a whole lot of time, but you gotta think that they're also thinking that's their only option.
They could be thinking that. Also, they could be just thinking survival mode. Just trying to survive and get the best points that they can. Because winning, I think a lot of people knew that it was going to be between David Tucker and Frankenfield unless they wrecked each other or took one another out in some way. Right now, I think these guys are just trying to survive, just wait out all these laps. I mean, we're coming up to the halfway marker in a couple more laps. Just wait and see what happens. And taking the risk, I mean, some of these guys, they might want to take the risk of short pitting. Like we're seeing Rexing.
Yep, he's going to be the first one that's going to come to pit road. This is on lap 21, so this is just a little bit before the halfway point. You'd have to think, though, this means this is going to be the one and only stop. This is the money stop for the 10 car.
10 cars coming in. And I mean, this is a risk of coming in early. And we'll see if this is successful for him.
Vincent Isabella just leaving pit road. He's already been put a lap down to the leaders. I think he was actually making a green flag pit stop as well. So now the gauntlet's been thrown down. Jared Rexing, the first one to hit pit road. We'll see if anybody else, especially back in that group that we saw with Burrell, Bailey, Lutz, if they're going to come to pit road maybe on this lap. Just saw playoff contender Stephen Mago. He's just been put a lap down to the race leader David Tucker, and Frankenfield has gotten around him as well. So even though Mago is running in the 20th position, he is now one lap down. So that's not good for him, at least, to start off this playoffs. As looks like Tucker stays out, Frankenfield stays out. We'll see if anybody here in this pack comes to pit road between the 37, 55, and 66.
I think we're really seeing, if you go to second place with Frankenfield and Stephen Mago, you can see the difference between these tires. I mean, Stephen Mago, he's just right. It looked like he was about to make a move, but backs off. But it looked like he was having so much more speed going through the corners than Frankenfield was.
Just had another taker to pit road. The 66 of Ryan Lutz gives up what was the 5th position at the time. He is now on the pit lane for his pit stop.
Also, Andrew Rucker is coming into the pits. And also Rishoff Koslaw is coming in.
Now it begins the cycle of pit stops. And going back to your point, I agree with you, and especially in the terms of Ethan Burrell and Jared Rexing. Maybe we've got two battles going on. We've got the battle between the two that have obviously been labeled the favorites, David Tucker and Chad Frankenfield, and everybody else, they're saying, okay, we're going to get the maximum points we can. We're going to shoot for 3rd place. So that might be actually the battle we're seeing going on there between Rexing, Burrell, Bailey, Lutz, all those guys, basically conceding the fact they're probably not going to finish 1st or 2nd. We're going to try and finish 3rd because that's about the best we can do. As Frankenfield, here it is. He short pits David Tucker, and he's in on lap 22.
We're also going to see Joey Bailey coming into the pits. Going to be dropping from 4th.
That was the question. Is this going to help Frankenfield be able to gain track position on David Tucker? I'll be very surprised if Tucker stays out another lap. I think this has forced his hand. I think he's going to have to come to pit road probably this next time around. Oh, Frankenfield overshot his pit. Had to back up. That's going to cost him some time.
All the time that he could have gotten from short pitting just got thrown out the window. Now he's really got to push his car now coming with these new tires.
He's also going to have to hope that David Tucker also has an issue on his pit stop. If Tucker hits it picture perfect and his crew is able to give him a good pit stop with no mistakes, that's going to be a huge advantage for the 19.
Other cars that we saw that were coming in was Tate Lytle and Jared Campbell. They came in for their pit stop. And here we go. Is David Tucker going to come in for the pits or not?
3 teammates all stayed out, the 19, 37, and 28. We'll see if they all pit this time. Well, Tucker is in, so he will give up the race lead. We'll see if any of these guys like Burrell or Clark stay out an extra lap, maybe try and get that lap-led bonus point, or can they not make it any further on fuel? 37 is in. Now we'll see about Joshua Clark. And remember Jared Rexing about the whole thing of him being the first one to pit road. He's not going to beat Chad Frankenfield, but he just got passed by Frankenfield, so I think he's going to gain quite a bit of time out of that very early pitting.
Well, we have these two that are racing it out, trying to see if they're going to be able to pass Tucker or not. Tucker is just now coming out of the pits, and here is the battle for first. Is Tucker still going to be in the lead, or is Frankenfield going to be able to pass him? It's looking like Tucker's going to stay in the lead.
think he is. Looks like he's going to get up through the gears quickly enough heading up to the S's. He's going to have a pretty good advantage for the moment between himself and Frankenfield, but remember, Frankenfield's been out there, been able to warm up those tires, so he's got a little bit more grip than Tooker does. We'll see if that allows him to reel him in. And how about Jared Rexing right there in third place, maybe about 3 car lengths off the back bumper of the 15. That was a great call by that team to bring him to pit road as early as they did.
Yeah, that was probably the biggest move that we've seen all race long. For sure was one of the best moves. We'll see, though, because he short pitted just a couple more laps than everyone else. Are those laps on those tires going to be able to hold up? Or are the guys that are back behind him in 5th or 4th, are they going to be able to come up and pass him?
Another playoff contender put a lap down. That was the 26 of Tyler Riggs, 2-time winner this season, and looks like he's had his fair share of issues today. Had some front end damage on the left front. Looks like he had a little bit of a rumple as well on the left rear quarter panel, and he is currently in the 20th position, first car 1 lap down. Right now, the interval about 1.6, actually it's now 1.8 seconds between Tooker and Frankenfield. And I gotta think that interval increased because of the pit road mistake on the 15.
100% it was. All the time that he possibly could have gotten was thrown out the window. Also, the fact that he had to race Jared Rexing to try to get past him was losing some time on that. So we'll see if David Tucker is able to keep this lead or if Frankfield's able to push it and gain some time.
I mean, when we look back at the first run before the pit stops, it looked like the longer the run went on, the better the 19 got, and the more ill handling the 15 car was. So now I would think with that pit road mistake, losing a little bit more time to Tooker, maybe Frankenfield's best hope is to get a caution flag here in these final 20 laps.
Maybe. With all these cars that are spread out and how spread out they are, I'm not thinking that we're going to be seeing a caution anytime soon.
As we look here at, we got a car around right in front of the leaders. That was Demantova, I believe, in the 20, just off the final corner. We are still green, but I don't know if that 20 car is going to be able to get turned around or not.
He just got going, and he's straight. It looks like we're going to be staying green. That was a very scary moment for our leader.
It was coming around kind of a blind corner there, that right-hander to the straightaway. And David Tooker was very close to pile driving the 20 of Demantova that was facing the opposite direction. Very fortunate, not only for the fact that the leaders got through, but it's also kind of fortunate that we're still able to stay green. I thought they probably were going to have to throw a necessary caution with the fact there was a car stopped right in front of the race leaders. And look at this, Frankenfield. I don't know if the 19 had to check up because of that or not, but the 15's making a charge.
It was a huge run that he got through the bus stop. I don't know how he got all that time, but he just got shut off like a rocket through there.
He is now within a car length of David Tooker. And remember, these two, they were bumper to bumper in the final turn. Holy cow. Boy, he just slid it through that corner. But they were bumper to bumper in the final turn, final lap, back at Tsukuba. David Tooker was able to move Chad Frankenfield up the track. He was able to get the win. Frankenfield probably remembers that. If he could get to the 19's back bumper, you got to think maybe he'd repay the favor and maybe try and move him out of the way.
A little bit of a flashback to Sebring. The leaders and staying in the lead wasn't actually the safest place to be. We saw about 2 or 3 different leaders that had instances with lap traffic. And that's something that we're going to be seeing for the rest of this race unless we get a caution, that there's going to be lap traffic that these leaders have to be battled with.
Excellent point. Next car that they would encounter would be the 7 of Joshua Personette, as right now 16 cars are still on the lead lap. I believe 22 cars are still running on the racetrack. We've had a couple of other drivers that have retired from the race. Levi Zelensky has called it a day. Same for, I believe that's Brett Jones is also out. Justin Bunn Sr., I don't think even started the race, and Joshua L. Adams. So 5 drivers have retired. But right now, it looks like Frankenfield, I don't know, it's just maybe taking advantage of those tires that he had with short pitting, maybe with being able to get the tire temps up a little bit sooner than Tooker was?
I think it's the fact that Frankenfield's trying to push his car as hard as he can right now and just not giving a care about preserving them and keeping his tires clean. He has to try to gain as much time as he can from what he lost during that pit stop. And I think Tooker might be just saving his tires a little bit more than Frankenfield.
You talked about the fact of, back at Sebring, how being in the race league was not the place to be. The only thing I would look at, the difference between Watkins, Glen, and Sebring, there seem to be more areas for the slower traffic to be able to move out of the way. We've got that straightaway between the S's and the chicane. You got the straightaway after the chicane, or not the chicane, the carousel rather. You've also got that runoff there in the chicane for drivers to be able to utilize if they so choose. So a little bit easier for the slower traffic to actually figure out that there's a place that they can go to move out of the way of the race leaders.
Yeah, I was just throwing it out there just based on that 20-car incident. You never know where it might be spinning out or where there might be an incident.
Saw there Joshua Personette getting put a lap down. I believe the next car just ahead is the 5 of Alec Balvance. Currently, he is running already off the lead lap in the 21st position. We look back a little bit further. We talked about the great call there, that short pitting for Jared Rexing. He's been able to keep a nice safe distance between himself and 4th place Joey Bailey. So if he comes out of this with a 3rd place run, you'd have to go back to that call to bring him to pit road back on lap 21. And right now, Rexing was the gainer. He moved from 5th up to 3rd. The loser on that round of pit stops was Ethan Burrell. He lost 2 spots, fell from 3rd back to 5th.
Yeah, he lost a lot of time, and I don't know where he lost all this time. It might have been an issue on pit road, or maybe a little bit of lap traffic being stuck in front of him. But he went from 3rd to 5th, and he's pretty far back from 3rd place at the moment.
You talk about the fact of how drivers want to get the playoffs. The playoff drivers want to start the playoffs on a high note. Right now, only 3 of your top 10 are non-playoff drivers. And you go all the way down through 13th, and you've got playoff drivers, not counting those 3. One driver that actually, I don't know if he maybe got lapped by the race leaders because he made a green flag pit stop, but Stephen Mago, he was a lap down not too long ago. He's back on the lead lap in 13th place, so he might have actually been one of the first drivers to hit pit lane.
He possibly could have been lots of different places to make moves. The car that we were talking about earlier that had issues on lap 1, turn 1, Damian Leninger, he's moving up. He's up to 11th now.
He is. He just got around Kendall Noah Player last lap, and he is now trying to reel in Joshua Clark, who is in that 10th position, trying to crack the top 10. It's been a long road here for Damian Leninger, as you mentioned, since the very first lap, but he's done a good job of coming back. And you got to think, too, we've already documented about the fact that he's had good runs at the last 2 road course places, but he's coming off his first win on the season, a must-win situation at Daytona. You got to think that gives a guy confidence heading into the playoffs.
Oh, for sure. That is something that you really want going into the playoffs, is that rush from winning and also knowing that, hey, you're in this now. It's time to step up, and he's been stepping up for sure after that early incident.
David Tucker continuing to show the way. The interval between himself and Chad Frankenfield has pretty much remained within the vicinity of 0.6 of a second. So again, very much like early on at the beginning of the race when we were in that first green flag run. Chad Frankenfield at least keeping David Tucker within range. But you gotta think, based off what we saw before the green flag pit stops as well, the longer this run goes on, the closer we get to the checkered flag, the stronger that 19 car is probably going to get.
Looking through the pack, see that there's a little bit of a battle going for 7th, where we got Jared Campbell and Tate Lytle getting close to one another. These guys have been close. They've been battling back and forth, and they got a little tricky about a lap or 2 ago when they got with 2 lap cars at the bus stop. But luckily, everyone kept it clean and kept it safe. But it gave Tate Lytle enough time to catch up and get right onto Campbell's bumper.
While those 2 are battling, it almost looks like they're starting to close in on Ryan Lutz as well, so that could be a 3-way battle for the 6th position in the next couple of laps.
Could be. Also, different battles that are going on. You got going back to only 9th place. You got Andrew Rucker and Joshua Clark getting close to one another.
Catching up there to Di Mantova, who just went off course a little bit there. We'll see if they're going to be able to get around him safely in that battle for the 9th position. About a straightaway behind them, they're just coming out of the carousel, is Damian Leninger in 11th. He'd love for these 2 to maybe get held up behind Di Mantova, and I believe that's Dustin Dewar as well in the 32 just up ahead. so he can close in and maybe have a shot of cracking into the top 10 in these final 14 laps.
Last couple of laps. And this has been a very clean race. I mean, besides the fact that we've seen 5 cars or 5 cars that are now out of it. But I mean, we've only been seeing a couple of cars spinning out here and there, and everyone's been keeping it quite clean. Are you surprised by this?
Not really. Our other 2 road course races as well, we ended up having drivers that would have difficulties with spinning out and everything. So this is definitely playing into the same kind of category. The thing that did surprise me, though, was the fact that the caution did not come out when the 20 was sideways. I thought we were probably going to see a yellow there. But with the fact these drivers have been able to get spread out when they seem to be able to keep it green for the first 3 laps, that kind of said to me we were settling into long green flag run. I didn't know how aggressive these guys were going to be in the early stages with the double file formation for the start of this race, but the fact that they were able to keep it together, get themselves into an orderly fashion, the fact that they did that early on has not surprised me. We've been able to go green this far.
If we go to 3rd place, Jared Rexing, our big winner from pit stops, has the chance of losing his position to Joey Bailey.
Bailey, of course, he's just out there trying to finish as best as he can. He could care less about playoff positions. And Rexing, you got to think, wants to get every point he can. So we'll see how much of a fight he's going to put up against Joey Bailey. Remember, Rexing was one of the first drivers to hit pit road, so his tires will have worn quicker than everybody else's. You got to think that might be why Bailey's been able to reel him in.
Also, Rexing could have been using up his tires a lot to try to keep up with Frankenfield and beginning parts of his tires being on. So he could have worn his tires then, and slowly but surely Bailey's been catching him and might pass him here going into turn number 1.
Both of these guys have been doing some pretty aggressive moves there, trying to either defend or pass. We saw Jared Rexing have 2 tires off the racing surface coming out of the carousel. Joey Bailey had his 2 left side tires off the racing surface coming out of the final corner. But looking at the gap that Rexing has back to the 5th place car of Ethan Burrell, I'm not sure how much of a fight I would put up for this position. You don't want to use up your stuff too much that you're going to put yourself in a position somebody else could really win. Why not let the 55 car by, settle into the 4th spot, and come away with a top 5 that way?
Yeah, but if these guys keep on battling, Ethan Burrell, we were just talking about, I mean, he's got a chance to catch up to these guys if they continue racing the way they are.
You also have to think, too, as we get closer and closer to the end of this race, drivers that are in these kind of side-by-side battles are going to be less likely to lift. They're going to be more aggressive. And if you're a playoff contender, the last thing you want to do is put yourself in a position where you're going to get spun out on the last lap and lose positions and points hand over fist.
Looks like Joey Bailey's finally going to get past Jared Rexing for 3rd place. But we'll see if Rexing's going to try to make a move. Nope, it looks like there's just too much space. Or is there a draft coming down the straightaway? He'll be trying to make a move here going into turn number 1.
Peeking, trying to get some clean air to that nose, but now he'll tuck back in line behind Joey Bailey's Supra and will slot into the 4th position. He's got about maybe 3.5 seconds back to Ethan Burrell, so I think right now he's just going to ride in that 4th position, maybe try and make sure he doesn't tear that equipment up before getting to the checkers. And as I look here at this battle going on for the race lead, that traffic is just up ahead. Rishav Khosla and Ethan Reason are right up ahead of the race leaders. So we'll have to see just exactly how courteous they're going to be as the gap between 1st and 2nd still remains about 0.8 of a second.
And those guys are in 15th and 14th that are about to be lapped down. A little bit going back to 4th and 5th and that little bout that's going on. With that racing that we were seeing Joey Bailey and Rexing have for that lap, it allowed Ethan Burrell to gain about 2 seconds on those guys. So we'll see if now that they've let off of one another and they're just running their laps, how much time does he gain now on this lap?
10 laps to go here for David Tooker. Someone just smoked the tires ahead of him in the braking zone. I believe that was Rishav Khosla. He's going to let both the 19 and the 15 on by as he overdrove turn 1. So that's one less car that they're going to have to deal with. Next car they've got ahead of them is going to be, I believe, the 86 of Ethan Reasoner.
You got the 86 and then the 83 of Stephen McGo just in front of him. So obviously there's going to be lap traffic. We're going to have to wait and see if lap traffic just lets the leaders go by, if the leaders catch them in a nice place where they can go by, or if they're going to be stuck in the bus stop or somewhere else on track.
It's kind of interesting too because I think it was back at, I want to say it was at Tsukuba, we ended up having where the leader caught up to a driver that was a teammate to the second place car. So there was kind of a little bit of, trying to help that second place driver catch up to the leader, doing a little bit of blocking, trying to slow him down. There's nobody up ahead here for either the 19 or the 15 that would fit that category of a teammate. Right now, Frankenfield's teammates are running currently, I believe, in 8th for Tate Lytle, and I think Andrew Rucker's a teammate, and he's in 10th. And for David Tooker, his teammates, they're not anywhere close to him. You got Ethan Burrell right now in 5th, and you've got Joshua Clark in 9th. So there's really no opportunity for either one of them to have somebody to play defense in these cars that they're starting to catch up to.
I'm just looking around at all the different battles we've going on. We got the battle for 3rd right now with Joey Bailey and Rexing. That looks like Bailey is starting to pull away, but they were really close on top of each other going into the last corner. And then also, if you go to 7th place, you got the battle side-by-side action with Campbell and Lytle and Tate Lytle going on right now.
Just had an incident in the bus stop there. David Tooker got around Stephen Mago. Frankenfield was not able to pass him, and I don't know if there was a little contact there with the 15 moving the 83 out of the way, or if the 83 tried moving out of the way and just took the chicane really wide, but he almost spun it around, and that just lost Chad Frankenfield a lot of ground to David Tooker.
That's the main thing we've been talking about. Lap traffic could begin becoming an issue here. It looks like lap traffic's starting to get out. Ethan Reisner, that is getting out of the way for the leaders, which is very nice to see from lap traffic.
Another battle that's starting to brew just inside of the top 10. Andrew Rucker has the 10th position, but Damian Leniger has been slowly chipping away, and he is right there trying to make a move in the carousel.
Battling all race long, and he's about to get in the top 10. He's probably going to make the pass here on the straightaway or entering the corner into turn number 8.
You go all the way back to lap 1, fell to 25th. And here about 40, well, it would actually be about 37 laps later, he's going to fight his way back up into the top 10. Obviously he's not going to win this race, but you got to think that's going to put a smile on his face.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's obviously a lot of grit from that team to battle up and try to get to this 10th position and just trying to survive and really just take as many points as you can after the incident you had on lap number 1.
Back to Ethan Barrera in that 5th position. You can see there's really no one behind him, nobody really ahead of him. He's got about maybe half that straightaway before he catches up to Jared Rexing. Rexing just trying to hang on for these final 8 laps. Interval has continued to increase between 1st and 2nd. It's now a 1.5 seconds from Tooker back to Frankenfield. I think now Frankenfield needs a caution flag here in these closing stages, but based on what we've seen so far, I don't think he's going to get it.
I don't think so either. I think the way that Tucker's been saving his tires until using them right now has been a very good strategy. You saw Frankenfield earlier in the run trying to use his tires just to catch up to Tucker, let alone pass him. And he wasn't able to pass him, and now Tucker, with the fresher tires, is now finally kicking in and pulling away.
Also, David Tooker and Chad Frankenfield have been laying down blistering pace with the aid of the green flag pit stops, but they have managed to put all but 12 cars off the lead lap. The next car they would catch is Kendall Noah Player, and it looks like they're going to catch him before this race is over.
I think he might be the last guy that they catch up to with just how late in the race we are. I mean, we're only 6 laps away from this race being over, and Kendall Noah Player looks like they might catch him. And usually when Kendall's near the leaders, when he's getting lapped, he's very nice unless the leader's going by. We'll see what happens this time around, though.
Let's think about the mentality of David Tooker coming into this race. Obviously, we know he's really good at the road courses, but if he closes out this deal and goes to victory lane, he's locked into the round of 9. That means he goes into an unpredictable 1.5 mile track of Kansas, a track that could very well be one of those fuel strategy races. We go to the short track paperclip of Martinsville. I mean, that's got to be a track that he's got to be breathing a sigh of relief knowing he's locked in regardless of what happens there.
I mean, this round, the opening round of the playoffs, is so crazy. We have 3 very different tracks. We have a road course, we have a 1.5 miles, and then we have a short track. 3 very different tracks that cater to some people at some places and cater to others at others.
When he comes around to the flagman's not going to be waving hello to him. He's going to be showing him 5 fingers, meaning 5 laps to go, and you can see visibly the gap. It's remained somewhere within the vicinity of about 1.5 seconds between Tooker and Frankenfield. I think Frankenfield has had a little bit of a combination of several things. He had that error on the green flag stop. He had an issue there getting around Stephen Magot. And I think he's just maybe been using up his stuff a little too much as well. And now it's starting to go away. Tooker has obviously proved, especially in the first run before the green flag pit stops, he's got the better long run car. Now he's just got 5 more circuits to bring it home.
Damian Liniger, I just moved over to watch him, and it looks like these tires are starting to wear off. He skated through the S's and smashes the wall on the side, almost completely spinning out. Keeps it straight, but man, he's got some side damage on the left side.
Was closing in on Andrew Rucker for that 10th position. You can see all the ground that he lost, and you got to think too, you mentioned he hit the steel guardrail. Those steel guardrails are unforgiving. He's got to hope there's no suspension damage. That thing's going to be a handful trying to make these final 5 circuits.
There's a couple cars that we've seen spin out, and a couple cars that have hit the railing in the S's. It's just a very tricky place. As we go back up to the lead, Chad Frankenfield's coming up to the 20 car. We'll see if the 20 car gets out of the way or not. Looks like it will. Coming to just a couple more laps to go. Tucker looks like he's in the driver's seat of winning this race.
Absolutely, but you look back through the field at drivers that are probably coming into the playoffs with the mentality of trying to point their way into the round of 9. Great runs here for Jared Rexting. Looks like he'll be up in the top 5. He's running 4th. Ethan Burrell there in 5th. Tate Lytle, we haven't really talked much about him today, but he's going to look like finish up in the top 10. Right now he's in 7th. Jared Campbell there in 8th. Joshua Clark in 9th. Andrew Rucker in 10th. I mean, obviously they want to be able to lock themselves into the playoffs with a victory, but to start off the playoffs, especially at a road course with a top 10 finish, that's got to feel good.
Yeah, it's got to feel really good. I mean, especially at a road course, a lot of these guys are going to feel a lot more comfortable at the upcoming race at Kansas. But looking back at this track right now, I think Tate Lytle coming up to Ryan Lutz is probably our closest battle we're going to see coming up to the end of this race. And we'll see if Tate Lytle's able to get another position, get up to 6th.
Is starting to close in, as you mentioned, on Ryan Lutz. I don't know how aggressive he will try to be here on these final couple of laps, but it looks like in terms of the lap times, he is just a little bit faster, maybe by about 100th or so. The matter of where he can pass him. Catching him's one thing, passing him's another.
He's only got a couple laps to go. As up to the lead, Tucker is just gapping even more on Frankenfield. This is just...
Almost, it is now 3 seconds between Tucker and Frankenfield.
So going back to Tate Lytle, Ryan Lutz. Again, this is the closest battle on the track, and it's looking like Tucker might have this race in the bag.
Right now you look at 2 drivers with 2 different mentalities. Ryan Lutz, he's just out there trying to win. You look at his last 2 weeks. You go back to Michigan. It was basically Tate Lytle and Ryan Lutz that were battling it out for the win there. Tate Lytle was the one in winner's circle. Lutz had to settle for 2nd. You go back to last week. Lutz headed into Daytona, a must-win situation. He got wrecked while leading that race and ended up finishing outside. I believe it was outside of the top 10. I think he DNF'd in that race with a shot of making it into the playoffs. So now he's just out there trying to finish as well as he can. He could care less about giving up the position to Tate Lytle.
Tate Lytle is driving like a madman. He's taking up all the course, and he's just trying to get as much speed as he can to get past Ryan Lutz right now.
To catch some traffic here, Dustin Doerr and Stephen Magot. We'll see if those 2 cars come into play in this raging battle for 7th place, as David Tooker has hit 2 laps to go here, and the interval continues to grow between himself and Frankenfield.
The battle for 6th place is still going on. Ryan Lutz trying to hold on. You got Tate Lytle right there.
go back to some of our other road course races with some moves that were made on the final lap, some drivers would suffer points penalties. Tate Lytle, yeah, he wants the position, he wants the point from Ryan Lutz, but he can ill afford causing a wreck there with the 66 on the final lap, suffering a points penalty, because that could really hurt him as far as playoff standings.
It really could. I mean, that happened with Damian Lehlinger during the regular season. He had a points penalty at Sebring that really hurt him, almost making him miss out on playoffs. But luckily, he got the win at Daytona that put him in, but he almost missed out because of that penalty.
Looking like Tate Lytle's car is really good through the second end of the track, going into the bus stop and off towards the start-finish line. Ryan Lutz seemed to be a little bit better in the first half. Looks like maybe, though, oh, look at this. Lutz says, all right, I realize you want the point. I'm not going to force the issue. He actually moved over and let the 56 by. Meanwhile, David Tooker, he just received the white flag. He's got a couple more corners to go before he locks himself into the round of 9.
He's coming to the bus stop, and it looks like he's not going to be catching up to any more lap cards. Looks like it's going to be clean sailing from here if he can just keep it clean and get around the last couple of corners.
David Tooker, he lost the lead to Chad Frankenfield in the first lap, but as soon as he got around the 15 car, he has dominated the remainder of this event. His only win so far this season took place at Tsukuba. He led the most important lap, the final lap, but he's led almost all of them here today, and he'll lead the most important lap yet again off the final turn, headed for the front straightaway start-finish line. Tooker's looking to advance to the next round.
Tooker is going to be getting the win, crossing the line now, and you got Chad Frankenfield coming in second, and Joey Bailey coming up in third.
David Tooker, the pressure is off at Kansas and Martinsville. He knows he will take part in the second round of the playoffs. He will be one of the 9 that will move on to round 2. Great performance there by Chad Frankenfield as well. Just a couple of miscues on pit road, a little bit of issues on track. No doubt about it, though, another road course battle between the top 2 road course ringers perhaps in this league. And it was Tooker taking the advantage this time. So now the advantage is 2-1 for Tooker in the Tooker-Frankenfield road course battle.
You got the
Eric
cars.
Rexing's going to bring it home in third. Great call for that team, and some very important playoff points there on a strategy call.
I think that was probably the biggest move that we saw throughout the whole entire race was that pit stop. Short pitting, gaining about 2 positions because of that. And what a great finish for him.
Then Burrell, his teammate, going to come up here and give him a little congratulatory nudge through the carousel. First place for Tooker, 4th place for Burrell. And their other teammate, Joshua Clark, there in 9th. So a very good team effort for that Supra organization here today at the Glen.
Other movements that happened, Damian Lehlinger actually got up to the top 10. Somehow gotten past Andrew Rucker in the last lap.
Dead boy, talk about the adventurous day he had. He had to claw and fight all race long. And in 45 laps, he managed to work his way from 25th, as you mentioned, just up inside the top 10 to the 10th position. David Tooker going to come here through the final corner. He'll probably head for the start-finish line to do his celebratory burnouts. It's his 2nd win of the season, his 2nd win at a road course, but this one probably the most important of the season so far because it advances him into the next round. There's the other teammate there, Joshua Clark, giving him congratulatory nudge as well as he heads for pit road. In a moment, we will get a word with David Tooker as well as some of our other top finishers. The road course race without a caution. I believe all 3 of our road course races now this season, we have not seen the waving of 1 yellow flag.
Yeah, there hasn't been a big enough wreck for there to be a full course caution. We almost had the scare with the 20 car earlier on, and I think that was probably the scariest part. I mean, there's been a couple of scary moments with lap traffic for David Tooker. He had some close calls, but somehow got it done, getting past Frankenfield earlier in the race and never looked back from there.
And it down there in front of the grandstands on the front straightaway. And Tooker will now, looks like he'll do a little bit of a drift there through turn 1. He'll be making the return to victory lane shortly. It looks like he's going to go back around here for the fans. Going to do, it looks like maybe a burnout there. No, I thought he might do one for the fans just out of turn one. Let's bring up the full finishing results from this race now. We mentioned about Jared Rexing there with that third place run. Ethan Burrell brings it home in fourth. So you had 4 of your playoff contenders finish up there in the top 4. You got to think, too. I mean, I know we know David Tooker's moving on to the next round, but for Frankenfield, Rexing, Burrell, this has got to give them a little bit of a cushion, probably points-wise, heading into Kansas and maybe even Martinsville.
Oh, another solid finish for Frankenfield helps him so much. I'm pretty sure if he has another top solid run, he's pretty much in by points, and he doesn't even need to win to get into the next round.
Point, because he came into the playoffs as the overall points leader based off the playoff points he accumulated, of course, being the only 3-time winner during the regular season. Joey Bailey, he was the top non-playoff driver to break up the playoff contenders. He'll finish the day out in 5th. Tate Lytle, playoff contender, in 6th. Ryan Lutz in 7th. And then the final spots in the top 10 filled by playoff contenders. Jared Campbell, he kind of faded back there after the pit stops. I'm not sure what happened with him. He finished in 8th. Joshua Clark there in 9th. And as we mentioned, Dane Leniger fighting and clawing his way up to the 10th position. You look at the rest of these other drivers too, and the results don't look that bad for them. When you look at drivers finishing down there like Rucker in 11th, Koslaw in 13th, Kendall Noah Player 14th, Stephen McGough in 15th. But then you have to bear in mind, it's the bottom 5 when we get to Martinsville that get eliminated. So while these look like good finishes, I believe that if you look at Koslaw, Kendall Noah Player, and Stephen McGough, they would actually be down in that bottom 5 with Tyler Riggs and Joshua L. Adams heading into Kansas.
Yeah, I mean, with Joshua L. Adams' finish where he was finishing in 25th today, it really puts him into a hole. He's got to be finishing a lot higher in the next couple of races if he wants to get to the next round.
Adams came into this race tied for 8th place. He was in a 3-way tie for 8th place, 26 points behind Frankenfield in the playoff standing. So this is definitely going to put him into a bit of a divot heading into next week at Kansas. But obviously, you got to think probably he was not expecting to do well here at the Glen and was probably looking at Kansas and maybe even Martinsville as the 2 tracks he would focus on to make his way, maybe even point his way into the next round. We are about to bring in our race winner, David Tooker, who picks up the first win of the playoffs here at Watkins Glen. Let's get a word with him now. Well, David, the last time we talked with you here in Victory Lane, you picked up the closest finish of the season back at Tsukuba, but here today, this probably has got to be a much more important win for you. You're now locked into the round of 9 with this win at the Glen. It looked like your car was really strong on the long run. What was it like for you?
Yeah, this one means a lot more to me. That one was just to get myself in the last time I won, but this time it meant a lot more. I'm into the next round. I can get all this stress off my back, but I knew going into the race it was going to be a tough one between me and Chad because we were really close in practice and qualifying. We were just on top of each other as far as lap times. I'm just really thankful that I was able to keep myself up front and not make any mistakes, not any huge mistakes, but it was a very good run for me, to say the least.
You have Frankenfield behind you there, pressuring you. He was as close up as 4/10 there after the pit stops. Just how easy is it to make a mistake here at Watkins Glen? Because I know when we were back at Sebring, it looked like grip was a big problem for drivers. Tsukuba looked like grip was a bit of an issue with the braking zones, but it seems like everybody's very familiar with Watkins Glen. But what are the issues that you face with this particular road course?
It's such a high-paced road course that if you miss one corner, it's just you toast your tires for that whole lap pretty much. If you push it really, really hard, like I was at the very beginning of that run, it's super easy to make mistakes. Like I was so used to how those old tires were driving that I got on new tires that I was under driving. Luckily I quickly adapted, but I can't even think of the words right now. I have so much energy. It's just if you make a mistake, it's going to be costly.
Well, we know obviously you've got great numbers here this season at the road courses. You had the first place run last time out at Tsukuba. You had the runner-up finish at Sebring. You win here today. What does this do for the mentality now going into Kansas and into Martinsville?
I still have the same mentality that I want to win because I got to prove myself that I'm here to stay and not just a road course ringer. But this ultimately just takes the stress completely away. I just gotta salvage a few good finishes and hopefully win the next round.
I got another question for you, but I want to see if Sam's got any questions first.
Yeah, David, it was a great run from you from start to finish. What were your thoughts though when you came up to lap traffic that was maybe you caught up at the wrong places? Was there any moment where you were just like, "Oh no, this could be the end of my race"?
Definitely. It it, it was gonna be a tough race with lap traffic, regardless. That's how road courses are. I knew that the guys that run in this league are pretty respectful for the leaders, thankfully. And I was catching them in the right spot for most of the time, but it really wasn't that big of an issue. But anyways, I want to thank those guys for keeping out of the way for us leaders.
I would have loved to have had a pulse rate of David coming off that final corner with the 20 car facing the wrong way. Would have loved to have known just how fast his heart was beating. But one thing I wanted to look at going ahead towards that round of 9, that the second round with the 9 drivers that are moving on, and now we know you're going to be one of them. We're going to Auto Club, we're going to Iowa, we're going to Atlanta. There's no road courses in the second round. So where's the track you think would be your best strength to try and advance into the Final Four at Homestead?
Well, I would like to say all of them, but I feel like my best chances would easily be at Auto Club in Iowa. Auto Club, I ran really good there in the Cup Series. Unfortunately, it came down to pit stops, but no, I run. Hopefully, I can run really good there, like I did the past few times. And Iowa was also one of my favorite tracks. Atlanta, I'm kind of iffy about. Anybody can be fast there. It all just depends on. It's going to be another tire race, basically. All 3 of those tracks are going to be relying on tires.
Obviously, a great run for you here today. We're going to turn the mic over to you, and we're going to give you the opportunity to do your shout outs here after your second victory of the season.
Yeah, I just want to give a big shout out to all the Pro Edge Racing guys. They were keeping me in check throughout this entire race and keeping me calm and telling me pitch strategy and when to do this and when to do that. So having them there was definitely a big help to me. And really just all the Pro Edge fans that watch your guys' stream, they're always going crazy in there. So big thanks to those guys for helping me out and keeping me under cool measures.
All right, well, mission accomplished here today. You're into the round of 9 with a win at Watkins Glen. Congratulations, man.
Thank you.
All right, so that was race winner David Tooker. We do have our 4th place finisher, Ethan Burrell, here in the Discord. I'm going to see if we can drag him up here for a quick interview. Don't know if we'll be able to or not, but we'll see if he is available. Drag him up, so give me 1 second. I think this is the one. Okay. Ethan, you got a chance to talk to us, man?
Hello?
He's there.
Yeah,
there he is. All right. Yeah, Ethan, 4th place run here today. A great performance for you as well as for your team overall, with your teammate taking the win. You also had another teammate finish in 9th. So obviously this has got to give you, not only as a driver, but also as with the entire team heading into the next couple races for this round, got to give you some confidence heading towards the round of 9.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I want to just shout out my good buddy David Tooker, man. That was awesome to watch. Quite a ways back by the time we took the checkered, but that was fun to watch him put on a show there. Yeah, man, it feels good. I always feel like I'm pretty solid at the road courses. I was having a good run. It was looking like I could have ended up 3rd, but kind of the pit strategies it put me back. So, but yeah, man, Tooker's awesome at these road courses. He got us our first team win back at Tsukuba, and we were slumping pretty good, and he pulled us up out of it with that win. And then, we've kind of been slumping again, but I mean, here he is coming through again. start of the chase, picking up another win for us. So yeah, we definitely feel like we got all the momentum.
Doubt about it. He came into this race sixth in the playoff standings with the reformative playoff standings. The fourth place is certainly going to keep you up there. We're heading into tracks like Kansas and Martinsville. Are those tracks that you can see as maybe an opportunity as a win and you're in, or are you focusing right now at pointing your way into the round of 9?
Yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely, gonna be giving it 110%, trying to win in at one of those tracks. I feel pretty good at both of them. And like you said, coming away fourth at the kind of our wild card race like this one, pretty good. So yeah, the plan is go out there and try as hard as we can to pick up a win, automatically lock us into the next round.
You got anything?
Not at the moment.
All right, well, let's turn the mic over to you, Ethan. Great fourth place run, and we'll give you the opportunity to do your shots.
Yeah, I just want to thank you guys. You guys always put on an awesome show. I always have a good time going back and watching, and all my fans out there, my grandma, my girlfriend, and Aunt Judy, they're always watching me every week, and I'm thankful you guys put on a show for them to watch. And just shout out all my teammates at Flatout Racing, man. These dudes are awesome. We work together and get along really well, and just a huge shout out to Tuker, man. He put on another good show for us and pick up that team win.
All right, well, fourth place run here today put you in a really good point situation heading into next week's race at Kansas. Hope to talk to you then.
All right, thank you. Have a good one.
You too. All right, so that is going to do it here for our post-race interviews. David Tooker with the victory, and I think we can safely say in terms of the Frankenfield-Tooker battle, it was just about everything we thought it was going to be as soon as we saw a road course was going to be on the schedule in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, it was a close battle from the start to the end. Sure, Tire Wear came to the reason why Tooker won the race at the end, but it was great pit strategies, a nice try by Frankenfield with the short pitting. But Tooker took the lead and took the win.
Let's look ahead real quickly here to Kansas coming up next week. I mean, this was a road course. Things got really spread out. Drivers were into the long green flag run because there wasn't a whole lot of passing that was going on. You had your little battles all the way through the field. We're going to a 1.5 mile racetrack next week. Going to probably be a multi-groove racetrack. Drivers are going to be in closer proximity to each other, and I think we're going to see a couple of yellows in that event. You got to think that more than likely we're heading now into not only the middle, but also the last race of this round. We're heading into the type of races where you're going to have to probably be a little bit more aggressive to keep yourself ahead of all the trouble that could happen behind you.
Yeah, aggression is what you're going to see a lot of, but also if we do stay green for most of Kansas, that is a track that you see a lot of fuel mileage and a lot of different pit strategies come into play. So I'm interested to see if that's something that we get to see next week, or if we're going to be seeing a lot of different wrecks from people being too aggressive, trying to stay in the lead of points where they are and try to make it to the next round.
I think also with the fact that we're going to be going to a short track where track position is very important, and it's kind of considered a bit of a wild card race there with the fact that you never know what can happen at the shorter racetracks. I think Kansas is a track that we're going to see some of those guys that are down currently in that cutoff line, those final 5 positions, like Tyler Riggs, like Joshua L. Adams. I think Stephen McGough will be down there, Kendall Noah Player. I think we're going to see them try to utilize Kansas to get themselves up out of that cutoff line, up above the what would probably be the 9th position in the point standings to point their way in heading into Martinsville.
Yeah, Adams is going to have to try to figure out how to get out of the hole that in. And also Richard Koslaw, he's someone that's got to really work his way out of the points hole that he's kind of in. He was starting all the way at the bottom at 14th with points that he was at. And he had a medium. He finished in the middle of the pack, but he needs to get at least a win or get a top 5 finish in the next couple of races.
We know David Tooker has locked himself into the round of 9. Question is, who will be his 8 competitors? We'll be continuing to find that out next week at Kansas. That'll be taking place next Monday. The following Monday, it will be our first elimination race at Martinsville. Thanks, everyone, for tuning here in this evening at Watkins Glen. David Tooker is the first winner of the ERL MegaDriver86 Series playoffs. For Sam Dyer, I'm Seth Cole. We'll see you guys next week at the Kansas Speedway.